A road crew begins the twice-yearly mowing along the rural highways of Wisconsin. But the guy driving the big tractor finds something suspicious blocking his way.
He found these suitcases.
2 suitcases covered with flies and oozing the smell of death.
When they opened up one of the suitcases, it had a dead body in it.
Then they open the second suitcase. Another dead woman.
And her hand was mummified.
Who are they?
Just so sad.
Who put them here?
He selected victims very carefully. He selected victims who were vulnerable.
Does the mystery man called Mr. Handcuffs know what happened?
She was handcuffed, gagged, ball gagged and all.
The green fields of southern Wisconsin, southwest of Milwaukee, not the kind of place you'd expect to see the handiwork of the suitcase killer. Walworth County Sheriff's Detective Jeff Recknagel was shocked when he got the call.
I came to the scene. We walked over to the suitcases. I unzipped the purple one, and I could see that there was another deceased woman inside of it that was inside of a black garbage bag. The only thing that protruded out of the garbage bag was one of her hands, and her hand was mummified. So to me, it was quite obvious that these 2 women had been dead for a very long time.
The women were gagged and tied up, obviously by a terribly sadistic killer. Cops cordon off the area with crime scene tape. Recknagel puts out an all-points bulletin for reinforcements.
I called up to my boss and I said that we need to have our entire team come down, seal off this area for miles, and find evidence. We checked for miles to see if potentially there were more dead bodies. We had no idea if these were going to be the only 2 dead bodies or if there were going to be more.
District Attorney Mike Gravely was afraid there might be more bodies just waiting to be found.
The first thing that I thought of when this came to my attention was that this was a serial killer.
Would they be able to positively ID the women with their bodies decomposed?
So after we find these women, we do general descriptions of them. We try to gather how much they weighed, how tall they were, anything that we could find that would help identify who they were. And we sent out a teletype to the entire Midwest saying that we had found these 2 deceased female people.
Police departments from all across the Midwest responded.
Messages came from all over the place about missing people. And then we had to put that all into a chart and then eventually work through it to see if these could actually be the people that were involved from someplace else. Because we had no idea where they were from.
As the detectives begin the difficult task of sorting through the leads, the CSI lab technicians are closely examining the ropes that bound the women. Could the killer's DNA be on those ropes?
The ropes that were on these women were very similar. They were similar in size. They were made out of the same material. The ends of the rope were lashed so that they wouldn't become unraveled at the very ends. So there was an analyst at the crime lab that studied these ropes because he specialized in that. These ropes had been wrapped around the victims for a long period of time.
Those reports from other police agencies paid off with critical details about the women's identities.
Both of them were extremely difficult to identify.
Investigators x-rayed the mummified body in the purple suitcase to check dental records. She was Jenny Gamez, only 19 years old.
Jenny Gamez was a junior college student in Oregon. She'd grown up in the foster care system there. Her father was residing in another country and so had sporadic contact with her. I don't think she had any contact with her mother. She described herself as a person who had no family that she was in contact with in her social media contacts.
Cops then identified the woman in the black suitcase. It's Laura Simonson, a 37-year-old single mom from Farmington, Minnesota.
We were able to identify Laura Simonson very quickly. We had a high degree of certainty who she was within 24 hours because of the tattoos that were on her body, and plus there was a missing persons report that was already generated because she was reported missing.
A friend had reported Laura missing. That missing persons report had been blasted to hotels and motels in Minnesota and Wisconsin.
Laura confided a lot in this man. He knew that she was going to Wisconsin. He shared this information with law enforcement, and he also knew her passwords for her different websites.
And those passwords led detectives to a website that both Laura and Jenny were using. A meetup website for people into the world of sadomasochism.
Bondage, discipline, whatever it is. But it's this type of behavior where they like to inflict pain, they like to inflict suffering, they like to do some kind of control because that power and control is their excitement.
Laura and Jenny didn't know each other, but they were bound in blood.
I think believing that a lifestyle where she would make zero choices and would be essentially under someone else's control in an entirely different state, was a kind of place where she maybe could get away from her pain.
Cops say both had communicated with a stranger seeking a 24/7 slave for absolute ownership. But who was he? Investigators got a big break when an eagle-eyed hotel manager in Rochester, Minnesota, remembered the missing alert for Laura.
This is just an unbelievable chance that somebody remembered this, but one of the employees that worked at the hotel remembered her being there, and they saved the video recording of those people coming and going from the hotel.
Laura checked in, but she didn't check out. Surveillance video shows that mystery man paying cash for Laura's room.
He didn't want to sign himself in at the hotel and leave a record of his name there. He paid cash. I looked at the records later. There were 27 guests at that hotel in Rochester, Minnesota that night. He was the only one that paid cash.
He's seen taking Laura's suitcase out on the trolley. But no one in the hotel realized Laura was inside that suitcase. He was wheeling her to the grave. Coming up, cops get a lead that could break the suitcase killer investigation wide open.
One of the employees walked by his car and noticed this extremely foul smell that's coming from his car.
And the smell leads them to a psycho.
So what was your nickname or call name? Mr. Handcuffs.
Mr. Handcuffs and his dungeon of depravity next.
They were in two different states of decomposure. Jenny was mummified. Her body was dark in color,